Peter says, I'm going fishing. And the others, 5 or 6 of them, said, we'll go with you. As a way to cope with this traumatic loop that they were thrown for. In this passage, we find out how to deal with that kind of trauma. Because it is incredible. It is important. It is serious. Jesus himself drew near to them. And as the choir sang, they had just a little talk with Jesus. But it's interesting, the first thing they had was breakfast. Vicki and I have a standing weekly date. Every Monday morning, we have a date at Martha's Diner for breakfast. We go in, sit down, tell Brittany we'll have our regular. Anita already has it made. But there is something about, and Jesus demonstrated that here, there is something about sharing a meal in the time that kind of grounds people, that kind of brings you back to reality. And Jesus knew that, and Jesus did that for them. He invited them to share their fish with him as well, but he already had breakfast for them. And they ate together. And then he knew that they needed to talk. And not just to talk about mindless things, not just to talk about the weather or how many fish they caught, 153 by the way, but about what was going on in their hearts and minds. And he talked about 3 P's. I almost brought 3 P's in. He talked about clarifying their priorities. And you see, one of the things that trauma does to us is that it scatters our thinking. And we need to get back to our priorities. And Jesus said to Peter 3 times, do you love me? Do you love me more than these? It was kind of irritating to Peter, but I'm sure he figured out after a while that Jesus had given him the opportunity to say he loved him 3 times, in contrast to saying, I don't know him 3 times. But whenever we have been thrown for a loop, whenever we need to reboot, the first thing that we need is to clarify our priorities. What's important to us? What are we here for? What are the stabilizing factors in our life? And Jesus did that for Peter. Now you may be thinking at this point, how can I talk to Jesus? How can I have this kind of a conversation with Jesus? Let me explain it. It's actually very simple. First of all, you need to be physically in his presence. Go to breakfast with him. I don't know how you do that. Go to the woods, go fishing, whatever it is, to physically be in his presence. And then to ask him, talk with him, as though he was there, because guess what? He is. And you will be able, I'm telling you that you will be able, because I have experienced this myself and I've experienced it with other people. You will be able to sort through these things as you give him the opportunity. One of my responsibilities as a pastor is counseling. And whenever somebody comes to me and says, Pastor, I have a problem, I have a question, I don't know what to do, I don't tell them the answer. That's not my thing. It scares me to tell somebody what to do. Because what if they actually did it? Then guess what? I'm responsible. And being the wimp that I am, I don't want to bear that responsibility. But the thing that I have found through the years, as people talk with me, as people say, what do you think? As people say, here's my problem, here's the question that I have, they already know the answer. They already know what they should do. They already know what the decision they should make. They already know that. They just need to be able to think through it and say it out loud and have Nate say, And it amazes me that when we go to a session like that, people will say, you know, Nate, you really helped me so much. And I will say, Guess what? Jesus is better at it than I am. Come to Him and tell Him what you're thinking. Come to Him and say, here's what my questions are. Come to Him and say, here's where I've been thrown for a loop. Jesus says, I will never leave you or forsake you. The Bible says in Isaiah that He is a counselor. So take advantage of that kind of counselor. Take advantage of that counselor who is always there. Talk with Him. Have a little talk with Jesus. And you will find your questions answered. And it's not a mysterious thing. Because like I said, they can do that with me. And I just go, But Jesus, who knows you more than you know yourself, Jesus who loves you, Jesus who cares about you and wants to help you and direct you and carry you and guide you, talk with Him and you'll find the answers. Clarify your priorities. I am always totally honest with Jesus. I figured out a long time ago, how can I fool Him anyway? Jesus, this is how I'm feeling. Jesus, this is what's going on in my life. Jesus, here's the mess that I've made. Here's the questions that I've had. Whatever. I tell it to Him right now. He's the only person in the whole world that I can do that with, without fear. So why not do it?